record this thing. And today, what I do want to focus on is talking primarily on where we are going to be hopefully picking up the steam and understanding some of the different areas, the facets of economics, and hopefully understand a little bit more about what we were talking about on Monday. But nonetheless, what I want to do is talk a little bit about our conversation and discuss a little bit more about the areas from the different perspectives, okay, so that we can get a better overview on it. So hopefully you guys had a bit of a bit of a stretch, a bit of a break to kind of see exactly where those parameters are taking place. And what we are going to be talking primarily now is understanding a little bit more about what they have and what challenges they're going to help us. So a lot of times where we kind of left off at, we left off on talking primarily on the outcomes of business and economics. So we talked about GDP, we talked about the gross differentiations, we talked about employment and so forth, and then we talked about the economic side. Okay, so we looked upon different economical sides of the business and kind of understood exactly where they are and understood a little bit more about the different areas, the different performance, key attributes, individuals, governments, and nations. And that led us to understand about resources of land. What we give in is what we get out. So those are important aspects of understanding the economical side of business. And of course, there are different factors of business. So we looked at entrepreneurship, land of the factory, that we need, support from outside as well as inside support from the company. So we had the inputs and outputs, and then of course the economical system we talked about. And from there, we understand that there is free market, but there's no real true free market out there, because the idea of free market is a free market enterprise. Just bear with me here, guys. I'm just going to go for 1 second and fix something. Thank you. Sorry about that. There was a little bit of a changeover in the house, so I'm taking care of a couple of things here. But going forward, we talked a little bit about. I'm just going to go back to the slide that we were in, and with that slide, we talked primarily on knowing a little bit more on some key factors that we were talking about the economy. And basically, going forward, what we usually focus on doing is understanding the free market, the free hand. So we talked a little bit about a free market economy. And that free market economy, we looked on the parameter of deciding what kind of free market we want to be in. Okay, so the idea is we have a system where businesses are private, but there still need to be function. There still needs to be a governance of some sort. Okay, municipality government, provincial, state government, and even federal. Okay, so we know that this doesn't fully exist. But in economy, we have what we call a pure planned economy, which is mostly socialist communist, and some form of a socialist leaning economy, where some of the government has control, but sometimes the government lets the free market have some control. Sometimes they control it. So, for example, they will control, for example, rules, regulations. They will control some enterprises which are no more free, and they also have a say in the what goes into the economy, what goes out. Then the free market economy says to us that within free market economy, we want to be able to adjust, understand, and go into perspective on how a free market economy works. But realize, even in the United States, Japan, there are more other countries out there that are free market, but they're not fully free market. Okay. The idea of free market, pure planned market, is kind of a theory, but it's never been truthful. Okay. Even North Korea, it's still working in with other countries, their allies, China, Venezuela, Russia. They're not fully a planned economy. So a lot of times, market mix economies is the way to go. Most free markets are leaning towards some socialist principles. So you need some hand out there. Okay, even in the United States, there was a crash of 2008. You still needed the government to step in. Okay, the government has to make the rules. Okay, as long as the rules, the free market is willing to do whatever it likes, as long as it's governed by somebody. Okay, but at the end of the day, it can go up, it can go down, and the people will decide. Okay, so again, when things are very expensive, we cannot afford them. Usually, that's where people will complain. So rent, food, those things, I wouldn't consider them luxury, but they're becoming more luxury brand. Okay, you know, all of a sudden you hear, a diversified town in an area of the city. All of a sudden, it's luxury buildings. Okay, that area used to be for people living. All right, all of a sudden, $1,000 two-bedroom apartment is turning to a $3,000 apartment. That means less people have less money. So we need the government to step in there. And a lot of times the Canadian economy basically is that there is government control in basic services that we know and love. So postal services, air traffic control, even in colleges. Okay, colleges are run by government institutions and government support. But then through social systems, we have areas that we need. Social security. The fact that if you have a social security number, it's not just your name, but your DNA and your connection with the government. So because you are connected with the Canadian economic system, you get healthcare, you get retirement, you get, insurance, employment insurance. You get all these benefits only for being a citizen of the Canadian country. Okay, doesn't mean you're contributing to the economy, but what you're doing here is you're becoming an important factor for us. So what we had a long time ago is something called an individual called Adam Smith. And Adam Smith, what he did was he devised a book called The Invisible Hand, which I think I may have. Oi, you guys are lucky. All right. Is this the one? No, it's my other book here. Maybe not. Oh my goodness, guys, look at this, guys. I have it. So guys, this is a book called The Invisible Hand. And this book is basically talking about a theory that this individual called Adam Smith had. And what he talked about was the understanding of where the future economy is going to look like. Okay. So he started to talk about the idea of the future. And the idea of the future in the invisible hand says to us that we should have an open economy. We should have a free market economy. We should become entrepreneurial. We should leave our farms. We should leave our, land, our property, and be able to go out there in the market and for a certain amount of gross. That's how we're going to make our economy. That's how he predicted it. Okay. But in the end of the day, of course, we have different markets, perfect competition and free market. And basically what we have in a type of competition for us is a perfect competition where we have X amount of people in the market, X amount of customers, and everything is fair, easy to get in and get out. But in a perfect competition, we also have issues, as well as we have issues with supply and demand. So a lot of times when we look at the demand curve, the idea of the demand curve says to us that we have a demand out there and demand is very limited. So we can only supply the market up to, say, X amount of products. So if we are producing apples, we have to make sure that every apple per day is going to be produced. That means that what we are looking for is the demand of the quantity. okay, demand of quantity, is that buyers are willing to purchase at various prices. So we know that if we're going to make, say, you know, 20, 80 cents per unit, we're going to only sell 1,500. 60 cents is about $2,000, and 40 cents is about $2,500. But we have to understand, with demand, we also need supply. And what we have with supply is we want to make sure the supply is going to be there. So with supply, we need to make sure how much we're going to sell. So when we bring these two together in our economy, we have something called the equilibrium, okay? The price where the demand will hit the supply, and that's where we can predict our market, okay? But perfect competition says that equilibrium will arrive at a point that buyers and sellers will be satisfied. So according to this figure, if we're the only suppliers of Apple, we can sell it at 2,000 units every single day and sell for 60 cents per unit, okay? But we cannot sell for 80. We cannot sell for 20, okay? That means that we only supply, 4,000 units, and there will be a shortage or an increase, okay? So we have to think logically here, how much units we need. And what usually occurs here is that when you create a perfect competition is like agriculture. The reason is that if you are making apples, you can make apples. You can also grow apples. So because you can grow apples, this gives us a homogeneous product, and there's very easy entry and exits in the market. Okay, monopolistic is a little bit different. Where in a monopolistic competition, you have a number one store. You have a store that wins, and the idea here is that when the store wins, the idea you want to do here is you want to create a store where you're number one, you create the majority of the market, like 50%. However, you still have other people that are playing in, okay? Then you have an oligopoly where there's a few handful of people and nobody else, like banks. Very hard to open a bank in Canada, okay? There's only 5 major banks in Canada, we mentioned in class, and that's about it. And then you have the monopoly, where you have literally one company running the whole thing. So things like Hydro One, Toronto Hydro, all these companies are basically a company that's still run, but nobody else can run it. Okay? They're the only ones. You cannot take your electricity, go off the grid, and find some more electricity somewhere else. Okay? Nobody owns hydro. Okay? Nobody owns, a water dam. Nobody owns the Niagara Falls. It's all controlled by one government and one company, and that company is the one that usually we are going to put together and use all at once. So the idea here is that whenever we look at a economy, the idea is that we want to be able to understand a little bit more on the economy and the area of which kind of economy we would like. So monopolistic competition, as I mentioned, is different qualities, different areas, different branding, continuation, the location that it's in. It has something of a monopoly. So again, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they're monopolies. Okay, they are one of the strongest companies out there. But the question is, there's other companies, and there's choices. Okay, you can have a no-name brand. You can have a substitute like coffee or tea. You can have your own brand, like, for example, SodaStream. SodaStream is making their own brand, and they can compete from do-it-yourself products. So the idea here is that in some cases, you deal with an oligopoly, and the idea of oligopoly is you have few sellers and suppliers and low market entry, okay? But companies have some control over price. So oligopoly, for example, is gas, oil prices. So gas stations, they have their own, price. You don't really get, new prices. They have a basically a cartel, and the cartel will decide what the price should be in the economy. Then, of course, like I mentioned, monopoly, electricity, gas suppliers, even companies, private companies that have a patent that nobody else can use, that is considered a monopoly, okay? So only one seller in the market, and sometimes a monopoly might be geographic or something in city that you can only have that company working there. And nonetheless, you also have economical goals. So the idea is last class, we want to tie in what you can do economically on growth, high employment, and price stability, but realize that you cannot have all at once. What happens here is that economical growth is ranked by GDP per capita, and the business cycle is that when we peak our economy, it will crash. Okay. And as businesses, we have to make sure that we're prepared for the crash. If we're not, then unfortunately, we may sink. Okay. So for every recession, for every slowdown in the economy, what happens is you have a turnaround. You have an economy that will rebound. Okay. So the game says is what comes down must come up. Okay. So for every recession, there is growth. And over time, we grow. That's how we grow. We get injured, we go to the hospital, we get better, and we do amazing things. Okay. So when you look at the Canadian economy is the same. When you look at growth and recession, they happen to have a lot of unemployment. People get fired, people get let go. Okay. So the labor force is very important in our economy. And throughout the last 80 years almost, there's been measures of economic stability. Okay. So the Canadian economy, out of 100 workers, the worst it's been, it was in the 80s. 12 out of 100 Canadians were unemployed. What does that mean? When you look at the number, six, free, free and 20, free 25th of the Canadian economy was jobless. Okay. People who could work, able to work, could not find a job. However, in most cases, the Canadian economy is usually between 4% at the low and more or less like 8% unemployment. It is good, it is bad, because we know exactly that people leave jobs, find new jobs. People will be able to create a new economy and eventually be able to succeed as they wish. Then, of course, we talk about price stability. We know that price is a key factor to a lot of things, but price stability is anyone's gain. You never know where price will go, and sometimes price will be a huge factor on making the economic rebound or stability. But a lot of times, changing prices are troublesome for both the businesses and individuals. Okay. If individuals cannot afford an item, businesses will suffer. If a business suffers, they're going to shut down. If they shut down, it will create recession. Okay. So we have to make sure that price stability is there. And today, we're not seeing it. Okay. Inflation is very high. Price outside the market is very high. People used to buy for $100 a lot of things at the grocery store. Today, not many. Okay. So it does dictate the way we spend. And this effect, not having a lot of things, will cater on later on. Yeah, Pratik. Pratik, you had a question? Nope. So the idea here is that price needs to be stable, but we know that outside factors that we cannot control, the opportunities and threats, are always going to be there. Okay. So even in inflation for the last 100 years, we've seen that with respect to, of course, trickles in the 1920s and 30s, and even after World War II. Most of the cases, inflation has been okay up until now. Okay. Inflation right now is going to sky high to maybe close to 10%. But we've seen worse. We've seen worse in the 80s and the 70s, sometimes in the 50s, and of course in the 20s. Okay. So inflation is problematic. Inflation means the price goes up, but when it goes up and there's no customers, price will go down. Okay. And when price goes down, it might affect the overall stability of the market. And the market, according to many economists, will have to fix itself. So beyond that, we also have something called CPI, Consumer Price Index. So you have a basket of goods you usually buy, from food, gas, housing, clothing, automobiles, and appliance. And the idea here is you want to make sure that within the CPI, the average is stable. If the average is not stable, that means that inflation is happening. and it could affect the market. So the governments have to look at it and decide what they would want to do next. And of course, we have the principles of economics. And I did not show you this video because I wanted to keep it for this class. So I'm going to turn around my mic and I'm going to show you guys the principles of economics and understanding what you need to do. So in this particular case, the principles of economics is kind of a good intentional video of understanding economical factors and realizing what kind of economical factors might be there, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my attention, guys, over to the video. I'm going to open up my video very, very shortly, and I will show you exactly what we mean by it, okay? All right, here's the video, guys. Take a look and you enjoy. I put some closed captioning for you guys, and hopefully it will help you. Take a look. Oh, last thing I forgot. Hold on, let me go back. Share my sound. Very important. You need to share my sound in my screen.
Course economics.
Stan?
13, your co-host.
Oh, co-host,
yeah.
awesome. Well, anyways, we're making our Crash Course Economics series at the YouTube space in lovely Los Angeles, California, because Mr. Clifford and I are both from Southern California.
Yeah.
Who are these no-names?
Where are the Green brothers? If there aren't any Greens, I'm unsubscribing.
How can you unsubscribe? What is this, some kind of a moving newspaper?
Did we just get heckled by the Muppets?
Sounds like it.
Hey guys, listen, don't feel bad about not being green, okay?
That's crazy.
Hi guys, listen, being green is great and everything, but being Adrian and Mr. Clifford, well, that's great too. And in fact, you know, guys, it's not easy being green. I think I could sing a song about that.
Can I sing with you?
Of course,
This is a
yeah,
dream.
yeah,
This is a dream.
No. We can't afford the licensing agreement for that song, guys. Economics.
Oh.
Sorry.
Well, okay, well, in that case, why don't you guys just introduce yourselves?
Okay. I'm Mr. Clifford, and I'm a high school economics teacher and YouTuber, and I'm going to focus on teaching you the theories and graphs of economics. You know, the textbook stuff.
And I'm Adrian Hill. I'm a senior reporter for the public radio show Marketplace, and I'm going to focus on showing you the real-world applications of economics. You know, the good stuff, the really fun stuff.
Hey, we're both fun. We're definitely not going to teach economics like this.
Welcome to Crash Course Economics. I am thrilled to be teaching you this fascinating subject.
I'm sorry, Professor Honeydew, but that's why people hate economics in high school and college.
Anyway, Statler and Waldorf have a point. The most important question in economics is, where's John Green? I mean, everyone knows he won a bronze medal in economics at the Alabama State Academic Decathlon. Well, John Green isn't hosting because economics. We'll explain later.
So let's start with the basics. What is economics? Well, it might be easy to determine what economics isn't. Economics is not the study of money or getting rich, although understanding economics can help with that. Economics is not the study of the stock market. It's just not. And economics is not primarily about men in bow ties forecasting what will happen in a given market or the overall economy. Actually, a few economists do that, but that's not the main focus of economics. Economics is the study of people and choices. The famous economist Alfred Marshall defined economics as a study of man
And woman.
in the ordinary business of life. It inquires how he gets his income and how he uses it. Thus, it is on the one side the study of wealth, and the other, more important side, a part of the study of man.
And woman.
So let's talk a minute about what else econ is. Economics is an 18-year-old deciding whether to work or go to college and how that affects her future income. Economics is a company deciding whether to produce smartphones or tablets and how that's influenced by what we consumers want to buy. Economics is the government deciding whether to increase its spending when there's a recession and if it's worth going into debt. So despite what you might think, economics is not boring and dull. Okay, some of it is, but it's not all like that, I promise. It's awesome. Understanding econ can forever change the way you think and problem solve. Our job over the next 40 weeks is to teach you concepts that will help you understand the world and hopefully make it a better place. No matter who you are, you will be using economics. In fact, You are using econ right now. You made a choice to watch this video. That means you must feel that the benefit outweighs the cost. You might be thinking, this is YouTube. There's no cost. But sure there is. You could be watching videos of kittens or skaters falling on their face or Charlie biting fingers. Oh! The cost of watching this video is the video you're not watching. The value of the next best alternative. Economists call this your opportunity cost. If you're still watching this video, it means that you believe it's the best use of your time, or you wouldn't be watching it. But what if I'm watching this at school? You ask, what if I'm forced to watch this? Well, you weren't forced to go to school. You could ditch, you could drop out, you could move to a country that doesn't have compulsory education. But the cost would outweigh the benefit. Even if you are at school, you're not forced to watch the video. You could close your eyes or put your head down. No one's gonna pry your eyes open. That'd be creepy. Now let's talk about why John Green isn't here teaching this course. John is an entrepreneur. He writes books, runs DFTBA, Vlogbrothers, and Mental Floss, and creates movies. But he can't do everything he wants to do. He looked at the benefits and costs of his choices, and in the end, decided to spend more time writing books. So Mr. Clifford and I are jumping in to teach you economics.
And believe it or not, we just covered the two most important assumptions in all of economics. First, the idea of scarcity. People have unlimited wants but limited resources. And second, everything, I mean everything, has a cost. And if these assumptions are true, then we need a way to analyze our choices and get the most from our limited resources. And that's economics.
Wait, but let's go back to the idea of benefits and costs. About 30,000 people a year die in car accidents in the US. Is there a way to ensure there will never be another traffic fatality? Yes, we can crush all the cars, close the roads, and force everyone to walk. That would solve the car crash problem. Do you want to decrease the number of people convicted of murder? You could decriminalize murder. You want to end the unethical treatment of elephants? You could kill off all the elephants, in an ethical way, of course. But before you decide to tenderly euthanize herds of beautiful elephants, think about it for a second. Each of these solutions is absurd because the cost clearly outweighs the benefit. Traffic fatalities are tragic, but we don't prevent them at all costs. You know that driving has risk, that you might get in a car accident, but you still drive. Why? Well, first, who's going to walk to the gym? And walking home with heavy groceries in the rain is way worse than the teeny tiny chance of dying in a car crash. The point is, individuals, businesses, and countries can't have everything. So they're forced to weigh the benefits and costs of their decisions and make choices. Let's look at another example. Military spending in the United States is over $600 billion per year. That's close to what the next top 10 countries spend combined. There are a total of about 20 active aircraft carriers in the world today, and the U.S. has half of them, and it's building more. The opportunity cost of those aircraft carriers could be hospitals, schools, and roads. So is the U.S. spending too much on the military? Should the U.S. focus on making guns or butter? That is, weapons or consumer goods?
And notice the key word here is or. We can't produce an infinite amount of weapons and consumer goods because we don't have an infinite amount of workers and farms and factories and raw materials. Scarcity means we must make a choice. The American president, Dwight D. Eisenhower, explained this best in 1953 in a speech about Cold War military buildup. Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those that are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It's spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. And this is a good time to mention the role of politics in economics. We're not pushing some liberal anti-military policy here. We're just pointing out that military spending has an opportunity cost. The resources not being used for social services like feeding the hungry. We're going to try not to push a political agenda on you. We're going to show you both sides and let you decide which one's best. So please don't say Mr. Clifford loves capitalism, so he's just a pro-business conservative, or Adrian's talking about environmental regulation, so she's an anti-business liberal. Yeah, we are pro-business, and you are too. I mean, where do you think your computer came from? That computer was brought to you by capitalism and the private sector. But that being said, the security and laws, roads, and that traffic ticket you got the other day came from the government. Conservatives and liberals fight over the details, but the free market alone can't solve all of our problems. And the government can't solve all of them either. Government officials use economic theories to guide public policy, and their effects are widespread and affect billions of people. Sometimes the theory is flawed, but many times the policy is flawed. Economists suggest policies based on theories supported by data and understanding of incentives. Having the right incentive is key.
But the right incentives can be hard to figure out. Take, for example, public colleges and universities. Many of them used to get state money for each student they enrolled. That meant universities had financial incentives to focus on recruiting as many students as possible, but not actually helping them succeed once they were in class. So states have started changing the incentives. Now more and more states reward schools for the number of students that complete courses or earn degrees. And in some places this has worked. It's helped schools increase their graduation rates by shifting money from marketing budgets to programs to help help students do better. But those incentives can also backfire if they're poorly designed. A university that gets money for graduates could push students through the program without giving them a good education. It might want to admit only students who come in with super high test scores, instead of considering other factors that might make them good candidates. It might push students into less rigorous majors. But incentives can help solve problems without adding more resources. You just have to get the incentives right. Many non-economists assume that the way to improve things like healthcare is to spend more money. Economists would point out that the U.S. already spends almost twice as much per person as other rich countries, and in many cases, they get worse health outcomes. Economists would also say that rather than spending more money, we need to make sure that insurers, hospitals, doctors, and patients have incentives to produce the most effective care possible at the lowest cost possible. The point is, if you mess up the incentives, the policy's not going to work. When Vietnam was under French colonial rule, the regime issued a bounty on rats to exterminate them, giving money to people for handing in rat tails. I guess because piles of rat bodies were too gross. The plan backfired. To make as much money as possible, the rat catchers cut the tails off the rats and released them, allowing them to make baby rats. The policy actually increased the rat population. It made things worse. We'll talk more about this idea of perverse incentives in another video when we talk about the 2008 financial crisis. Again. For now, let's go to the thought bubble.
Speaking of 2008, people sometimes criticize economists asking why didn't they predict the 2008 financial crisis, or why can't they agree on what the government should do or shouldn't do when there's a recession? These criticisms fail to distinguish between macroeconomics and microeconomics. Specifically, all these complaints are about macroeconomics. Macro studies the economy as a whole. It looks at the whole nation's output, unemployment, inflation, interest rates, government spending, and growth. Macro answers questions like, will unemployment rise if there's an increase in taxes? Will an increase in the money supply boost output or just increase inflation? Will a slump in European economies cause the U.S. economy to slow down? Macroeconomists get more airtime because they predict the direction of the overall economy and work with the media and businesses and Congress and the Federal Reserve. But less than half of all economists are macroeconomists. There's a whole other side of economics that look at different questions. How many workers should we hire to maximize profit? If our main competitor releases their product in May, when's the best time to release our product? And which is better for fighting climate change, a gas tax or increase in fuel efficiency? These are all microeconomic questions. They're not about predicting GDP or measuring unemployment, but they are crucial questions that economists must answer. Also, if you don't know what GDP is or what a high or low unemployment rate is, don't worry, we'll get there. So macro and microeconomists are two different groups asking different questions under one academic umbrella. If economics was biology, macroeconomics would be ecology, while micro would be cell biology. If economics was physics, macro would be cosmology and relativity, while microeconomics would be Newtonian mechanics. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Stan, I've always wanted to say that, and I can cross off my bucket list. Now, I've ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, arm wrestle Ben Bernanke, and swim in a giant pool of money like Uncle Scrooge.
Obviously, we're glossing over the details, but we promise to cover everything in the next 40 weeks. From supply and demand to monetary policy, we'll cover it all, except for maybe the giant pools of money. We can't promise you that learning economics will make you wealthy, but we can promise that learning economics will enlighten your mind and make you a more informed decision maker. And that makes us all better off. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching Crash Course Economics. It was made with the help of all these nice people. They work on the show because there's financial.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So, I hope you enjoyed that video. Could you guys hear that video? Was it okay? Was the volume okay? Anyone? Yep, good. All right, perfect. Thank you, Guerrero. Okay, so coming back to reviewing the class, what I do want to highlight here is I do want to talk a little bit about the area of understanding economic forecast. He talked about it. We cannot predict the future. We all know that, okay? We cannot predict what mark you get. We cannot predict, who you're marry if you're single. We cannot predict how much wealth you're gonna have. We cannot predict how good or bad the economy is, okay? They all have factors. So what we can do is look at economic indicators and decide based on economic indicators where the future lies in, okay? So some of the economic indicators will lag, some of them will lead us, but nonetheless, when we look at economic indicators, the idea is we take that number and we will look at the government's role in it. If they see that the economy is going down, because they look at CPI, Consumer Price Index, they look at areas of interest, they look at areas where we can make monetary policies, it can help us, okay? So assume, for example, if the economy is not that good, then the government will say higher the interest rate, meaning that it will be hard for you to take out money and riskier. Okay, meaning that you're going to pay, 10%, 15% on your interest because the economy is not that good. Okay, but the other side says that if the economy is good, make it lower. Make sure that people can afford something. Okay, create a fiscal policy that talks about the government and how the government uses the money that they are getting from U.S. taxpayers, and make sure that it goes to useful items, useful areas of our interest. Okay. So a lot of times we look at the national debt. Okay. Again, the national debt will go into consideration. And what we have to define here is understanding the economical benefits to realizing what we do in our economy, looking at our supply and demand, and creating equilibrium price for our products, from our goods that we buy every day to the services that we give you, such as college education, bus services, and beyond, and understand that the type of competition will play out in the market. And we look at economic indicators and government policies to help us out in this. So what I would like you guys to see here is that there are other options in the economy. There are other options that we can deal with in our economy. And what we deal a lot with is, in a lot of times, we understand that in our economic situation, there are going to be situations out there that we are going to be able to maybe create a better market in the future. Okay, so a lot of times when we look at the future market, there might be a better economic system than maybe our current system of capitalism and social democratic. Maybe there's a new mix out there. Maybe after seeing that, maybe this is not the best movement because, again, it does exploit people. What can we do in the future to help us? So there is another video that I'd like to show you. It's a kind of a holistic system, nothing official here. It's a train of thought that idealizes what kind of system might be there and how can a system be able to help us in the future. Okay, so looking at the system, there might be a better system than capitalism. Okay, and understanding that in a capitalist society, there might be a system that we may be using in the future. Okay, so please take a look at this video, and hopefully this will give you a better idea of what a future capitalist system might look like, especially when there's less government control, but also a governance of where we might be looking in the future on. Okay, take a look at this and enjoy.
The first president of the United States started complaining of a sore throat and difficulty breathing. Being a former president, he had very good access to a team of doctors who started to diagnose and treat his condition by draining his blood. In total, the doctors attending to Washington ended up draining 2.5 litres of his blood before he eventually passed away less than 2 days after first complaining about a sore throat. Medical specialists have argued about the actual illness that caused Washington's breathing difficulties, but all doctors today universally agree that removing that much blood from someone didn't help the situation and possibly ended up killing him in the process of treating him for an illness that he may very well have just recovered from naturally. Our understanding of the human body, illnesses, medical best practices and treatments has come a very long way in the past 200 years, and that has helped us enjoy lives that are longer on average, massively reduce infant mortality, and increase living standards for people suffering from medical conditions. Economics, just like medicine, is a consistently evolving field of study, which also has real impacts on the way that we live our lives. The traditional sciences tend to get all of the glory when we talk about the increased living standards we've enjoyed in recent history, and it's easy to see why. Every time you make a call, shop at an abundantly stocked supermarket, or, don't die of a common infection, you have advances in physics, medicine, chemistry, and a long list of other scientific endeavours to thank. But a lot of these advancements were accommodated and accelerated by a developing understanding of what an economy is and how to effectively manage one. Although it may be far less tangible, there is a very strong argument that advances in financial systems, trade practices, and economic controls have done just as much to provide us with the wealth and prosperity we enjoy today as all of the other advancements in technology that have come about over the same time span. Looking forward, this could mean that theoretically further breakthroughs in economic knowledge could accommodate a world where we all live like billionaires do today. Now, I know that's a pretty big claim, so we'll need to look at a few things to back it up. But this also makes it really important to ask the question, how much do we actually know about economics? Are we those 18th century doctors trying our best to fix economies only to do more harm than good? Or is our collective knowledge of economics close to complete with only minor improvements left to make? Well, to find out, we as always need to answer a few key questions. So, how do advancements in economics translate to improved living conditions to regular people in the real world? How can we tell how far along we are in our understanding of economics? And finally, could this solve existential issues like achieving limitless growth in a finite world?
1 second, guys.
We're
Just bear with me
220,000
here.
CPAs driving progress for what matters.
This episode of Economics Explained was brought to you by Clean My Mac, a powerful tool to help you make sure that your Mac is working to its fullest potential. The creative team here at Economics Explained drives their Macs hard every day, working on the animations that bring these videos to life. So it's very important to us to make sure that those machines are free of useless bloatware, unused files, and even potentially harmful malware. The latest update from Clean My Mac X,
Sorry, guys, 1 second.
to really understand the progression of our
Thank you.
economic understanding as a species, it's important to understand what economics is in the broadest possible sense. Economics is a social science that studies the way that people interact with things of value. This is the same as saying physics is a natural science that studies matter, its fundamental constituents, its motion and behaviour through space and time. Physicists will try and answer questions about the nature of the universe, where economists will try and answer the central economic problem, which is that we as humans have unlimited desires, but only limited resources in which to fulfill those desires. So, certain sacrifices must be made. The central economic problem is unfortunately not solvable, but it can be broken down into 4 separate questions. What should be produced? How much should be produced? How should it be produced? And who should it be produced for? If you look at anything written by economists, it will be an attempt to answer these questions in different ways to produce slightly better outcomes by either allocating resources in a way that makes people more satisfied, or by simply finding a way to produce more with the resources that we have available to us. Even economic theories as broad as capitalism are just a way to answer these questions. In the case of capitalism, it's what's most demanded by the market, in the amount that is demanded, produced in the most efficient and cost-effective way possible, to be given to those that are willing and able to pay for it. It's by no means a perfect system, but it is very efficient at allocating resources and incentivising the utilisation of more resources to improve the well-being of its participants. Capitalism as an economic system is, however, for example, terrible at answering questions about what to do with things of negative value. If you're wondering what these things are with negative value, well, it's stuff like trash, sewage, chemical waste, spent nuclear fuel, and probably the biggest one of all, greenhouse gas emissions. People actually value the absence of these things, but the market system of capitalist economies have no real mechanism to assign the costs of these items to the parties responsible for producing them without government intervention. I know it sounds absolutely awful to say, but from a purely cold-hearted rational economics point of view, this classification can also be applied to people that may be disabled, elderly, or otherwise incapable of producing more value than they consume. It sounds terrible because there have been some famously not so fantastic ways of dealing with this in the past, but it doesn't need to be, and with ageing populations in a lot of countries, our economic systems need to have solutions to more and more people in an economy being unable to work and requiring the assistance of those that still can. So, capitalism, the basic system by which we run every advanced economy in the world today, is good at answering some questions and not so great at answering other questions. Different economies around the world have tried to plug these gaps with different workarounds like carbon pricing and forced retirement savings, but oftentimes these workarounds just create more problems. Now, to go back to economics just being any other science, like say physics, there is an interesting comparison we can draw. Geocentrism, as in the theory that the world was the centre of the universe and everything including the sun rotated around it, answered most questions that people had about what went on in the sky. It did the trick for navigation, tracking the seasons, and everything else that people back then needed to monitor the sky for. There were of course a few inconsistencies in the movements of celestial bodies, but these were just gaps that were answered using various workarounds that oftentimes created more problems. Sounds familiar, right? So, could capitalism be to economics what geocentrism was to astronomy? Well, we don't know what we don't know, and it's possible that tomorrow some brilliant economist will come up with a system that revolutionises the way that we manage economies to such an extent that it will be like entering the space age. It sounds crazy, but it's already happened, and the impacts were huge. The advent and widespread adoption of steam power, along with a handful of other technologies, are widely recognised as the drivers of the Industrial Revolution, which set us on our current trajectory of massive worldwide economic growth. But there was something else in the world happening around this time. Mercantilism was the general economic system that the global economy ran off before economics was even an academic discipline. The idea of mercantilism was that an economy should try and export as much as possible while importing as little as possible, because that way you could accumulate as much gold as possible. Now, to a world that had not yet studied economics, this made perfect sense. Gold was almost a universally accepted store of value, so if you wanted to be wealthy, you get as much gold as possible. Of course, mercantilism is not how we run our economies today, because the study of economics has shown that economic cooperation and free trade produces much more wealth overall, because certain regions have advantages in producing certain items, and if we all just do what we're good at, the world becomes a richer place. It also makes it possible to produce items that simply couldn't be made within the confines of a single nation, no matter how big it is. You are currently getting some small economic benefit from watching this video, and you might attribute that to the technology which has made it possible, but also consider the advanced economic systems that coordinate all of that technology. The video you're watching now would not have been possible without silicon-rich quartz, and you might think you know where this is going, but you'd be wrong. That quartz rock from South America is refined into pure silicon and is then shipped to Germany, where a company called Zeiss will turn it into a mirror with micron precision. Those levels of precision are achieved by using machines that turn that silicon into a vapour before depositing it one atom at a time onto a mirror plate. These machines were made possible by technical collaboration between dozens of universities and research institutes across Europe and North America. Once these mirrors are made, they are then shipped to the Netherlands to a company called ASML, which puts them into machines called fabs. The mirrors work in conjunction with high-powered lasers to etch computer chip patterns into more blocks of pure silicon to make CPUs and GPUs. These fabs are then shipped to companies like TSMC, which manufactures chips based on designs supplied by companies like AMD, Intel, and Nvidia. Those chips are then shipped to companies like Foxconn, which will combine them with other advanced components to make something like a smartphone. They will then deliver this smartphone to a company like Apple, who will have designed and marketed it for customers all over the world. That is less than 1% of the steps involved in making an advanced product like a smartphone. I haven't mentioned the companies that transport any of these products, or the teams making sure the whole process is kept secure, or even the institutions already working on making the technology this whole supply chain is based around completely obsolete. It's easy to see this whole process as simply a marvel of modern science and engineering, and it is. But all of that economic collaboration, free trade, and division of labour across dozens of countries and millions of workers would not have been possible without the economic advancements of people like Adam Smith. Our economies are also wealthier today thanks to the teachings of people like Keynes, who show that the business cycle could be managed by governments so that economies continue to grow wealthier over time by taking advantage of both the natural booms and busts that comes with an economy run off debt. Today, most economists in positions of power subscribe to the neo-Keynesian school of economics, which lays out how to run an economy by effectively managing debt, employment, inflation, taxation, and supply-side output to generate wealth that would not have been imaginable when Keynes was alive. It's easy to think that economics has been solved, and that we will never experience another wealth boom like what we had when we transitioned from mercantilism or embraced the business cycle. But of course, we don't know what we don't know. So it's probably more productive to ask, what are the limits of economics? Economics is not magic. It can't create wealth where there is none. All it can do is guide people on what the most efficient allocation of resources is in order to achieve a desired outcome. That outcome should hopefully be the equitable prosperity of all participants in that economy, but even if it isn't, you can still use a good understanding of economics to get a society to where you want it to be. The second limitation of economics is that it cannot be used to predict the future. John Maynard Keynes himself, after helping to develop our modern understanding of the business cycle, attempted to grow his fortune by investing based on the predictable ups and downs of the economy over time. It didn't work. Economists are often heralded or shamed for making predictions about the future that turn out to come true or not come true. It's definitely their fault for attempting to make predictions, but really, of course, nobody can predict the future, least of all economists. If a doctor said that someone's outlook was healthy with nothing to worry about, and that person later went on to develop a terrible illness, then nobody would think less of that doctor because it's not their job to predict someone's medical future. Likewise, economists can look at the metrics they have available to them and say that there is no cause for alarm, only for something to come along which proves them wrong. Economists shouldn't predict the future. They should instead make recommendations about the present to encourage economic growth and to reduce bad outcomes or make them less likely going forward. The next limitation of economics is that it is a really difficult subject to learn about. Now, I don't mean that like it's hard for an undergrad student to learn about what an indifference curve is. I will happily admit that there are lots of subjects out there that are far more difficult than economics. What I mean is that it's incredibly difficult to study new economic theories because you can't create an economy in a lab, and national economies aren't going to change how they operate just to test a theory that could make them better off overall, because if that theory doesn't work, then they have potentially made the lives of millions of people worse. This difficulty in studying and verifying economic theories might sound really disheartening because it means that progress is slow, but maybe slow progress means that we will be benefiting from economic advancements for generations to come. There is probably an economic system out there that works to encourage innovation, motivate workers, and reward the intelligent allocation of capital, while also actively discouraging the negative externalities that are so abundant in current market economies. What would that look like? I don't know. If I could definitively demonstrate a way to manage our economies differently that would result in greater levels of wealth generation for the world, I'd be collecting my Nobel Prize right about now. But the good news is that we probably know very little about economics, and if nothing else, all of the craziness in the world right now is a unique opportunity to learn so that we are better prepared for next time. Thanks for watching, mate. Bye.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. So to go back again into that conversation that we had, basically in a jit of things, the idea of economics is an art. Okay, it's an art. Basically, we have policies we had before. We have economic booms and bust. Economics was studied for the last 400 years. So in the 1600s, people started to understand there's a reason why things go up and down. Okay, but they really didn't grasp it. And in today's modern day and age, we can study it through policies, variables, statistics, all these things. And, he mentioned that, if we had a good policy, everyone will be rich, everyone will be happy, everyone will be satisfied. Okay. But it means that if we do that, we're also going to have a social system where there's no reason why we should be competitive. If I was to tell you tomorrow, we will support you, we'll give you whatever you want, how many of you would drop out of school? Many of you. Okay, many of you would decide you want to drop out of school because what's the benefit of going to school? Other than knowledge, okay? Nothing. And you cannot have that altogether, fortunately, okay? But you never know. You never know where the future will lie. And maybe, a planned economy was a failure. A free state economy, free market economy is a failure. And the middle is another disaster. And we're going to make a whole new idea, okay? Only time will tell. And that we don't have a forecast for. Okay, before we go, I want to show you a couple of things that I have for you. Please take a look. Can you guys see my screen? Can you see my screen here? Yes, Grace.
Yes, teacher.
Thank you, Gustavo and Grace. Okay, so again, I've given you guys Scavenger Hunt Part 2. Okay, take a look. Thank you for the Egbert with the thumbs up. Take a look at it. Basically what it is the second part of the scavenger hunt. Make sure that you can look at it, answer it, and deliver it to me, okay? It is the same kind of deal where you're going in and your goal is to find the information. Very simple, okay? There's the the document. You click on the document, answer it, submit it, you're done. Okay. This one is due February 2nd. Okay. And next week, we're going to talk about SWOT analysis. We're going to do a personal SWOT analysis and hopefully complete it in time and get you guys on the right stuff. Okay, guys? Any other questions? Joshua? No? Okay. All right. Not a problem, guys. Awesome, and more awesome. So thank you guys again for joining us. I hope you guys have yourself a swell of a day. I wish you guys all the best. And by all means, guys, you can start right now working on scavenger hunt. Make sure you use the time in class to complete it. Submit it to me, and you're done. Okay? Sounds like a game plan? I hope so. Yeah, Grace?
Hello, Professor. May I ask that the videos you played in the class.
Right.
Yeah, the link you proffered to us in the lecture, right?
You're looking for the links for the videos?
Yeah, we can
You want to rewatch it?
review it. Yeah, after class.
Okay, yeah, I can give that to you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. See that on if you click on in a couple of minutes, if you click on the week number 3, I'll give you the videos.
Okay, so you will copy it. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
gonna give it
You
to
will
you right
copy
now.
it in chat, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna copy it and give it to chat.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. Does anyone have any further questions? Thank you, Prof. Thank you, back Raquel. Thank you, Fangame. Okay. If no, please, guys, start working on your scavenger hunt. I will be supporting you guys. But if not, guys, sayonara. Take good care, and I'll see you guys here next week. Bye for now.
Bye, teacher.
You too. Take care, Gustavo. Take it easy.
Hello, Professor.
Hello. Yes.
Uh, when will you send the link? Share the link with them.
It's if you go and refresh your browser, you will see it. Economics video 1 and 2.
Okay.
Did you refresh it?
So
Like
you
refresh.
so you have post in the e-centennial, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you so
it's there.
much. Thank
You're
you.
very welcome.
Yeah, may I ask that in business in this subject, in this course, we have no textbook, right?
No, I give you the textbook. I give you the information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Have a
You're
great
welcome.
day.
You as well. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.